"Your sister will live in your apartment," my parents said over family dinner. I just let 'em talk. 1 week later, they showed up, car packed. But I wasn't the one waiting. Insi 1718. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie one final time. My presentation materials were carefully packed, and every detail was double-checked. Tonight wasn't just another family dinner. It was a defining moment. My sister Laura was hosting at her lavish mansion, and I planned to seize the opportunity to prove my worth. For years, I had quietly built my company, Robinson Capital, making smart, strategic investments while staying under the radar. Now, I was ready to present my biggest business venture yet. All I needed was the support of Monarch Bank, the very bank where my brother-in-law, Daniel Taylor, held the powerful title of Executive Vice President. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. 13 years ago, Daniel dismissed my first business idea with a smirk, rejecting my loan application and mocking my vision as nothing more than a childish fantasy. Since then, he never missed a chance to remind everyone how he had saved my sister by marrying into our family and giving her a better life. Every family gathering became his stage, a place to flaunt his status while making me feel small. Laura greeted me at the door with a polite air kiss on the cheek. The sister who once stood by me, defending me from school bullies, now seemed distant, transformed by wealth and status. "You look very professional," she said, her eyes scanning my modest suit with thinly veiled judgment. "Daniel just got back from Paris. Wait until you see his new French suits." Her words stung more than I expected, not because of the insult, but because it reminded me how far apart we'd grown. The dining room was a showpiece of extravagance. Glittering chandeliers hung from the ceiling, antique-style furniture was placed meticulously around the room, and the walls were lined with paintings that seemed too perfect to be real, likely replicas trying to imitate old-world charm. Daniel sat at the head of the long table like royalty, surrounded by fellow bank executives and their elegantly dressed spouses. He welcomed me with a theatrical grin. "Eric, the small business genius graces us with his presence," Daniel announced loudly, prompting laughter from around the table. "Still running that little firm of yours? What was it called again?" "Pigeon Capital. Robinson Capital." I corrected him quietly as I began setting up my laptop. "Actually, that's why I wanted to speak tonight. I have a proposal I'd like to share." Daniel groaned dramatically and leaned back in his chair, waving his wine glass. "Oh, no. Not another one of your pitches," he said with a chuckle. "Remember your last idea, honey?" He turned to Laura. "Affordable housing, wasn't it? As if anyone with money wants to invest in that." Laura laughed softly, her smile tight. "Eric, maybe tonight isn't the best time," she whispered, glancing around nervously. But I wasn't backing down. "This project is different. It's a $5 billion development, fully planned, with sustainable housing, retail spaces, and community centers. All we need is funding for Monarch Bank." The room went silent for a moment before Daniel nearly spat out his wine in laughter. "$5 billion?" he repeated, wiping his mouth. "You've lost your mind. You can barely afford that suit, and now you want to handle billions." More laughter followed, echoing off the expensive walls. I didn't flinch. I looked Daniel in the eye and said calmly, "The numbers work. You just have to look." "I'm telling you, Daniel," I said, opening my laptop and pulling up the presentation. "Just take a look. The numbers speak for themselves." Before I could say more, Daniel slammed his hand down on the dinner table, the silverware rattling from the force. He leaned forward, eyes burning with a familiar condescension. "Do you want to know why you'll never make it, Eric? Why you'll always be stuck chasing small dreams? It's because you don't understand how the world works. Business isn't about helping people or building some noble little community. It's about control, about power, and you, dear brother-in-law, have none." He straightened his expensive French suit and smirked, clearly enjoying the attention of the guests. "Tomorrow morning, I'm giving a presentation to Monarch Bank's board. It's about a real business deal, big money, big acquisitions. The kind of stuff you'll never understand. So do yourself a favor, stick to your fantasy projects. That's all you're good for." Polite laughter rippled through the room, forced and hollow. Just then, I felt a soft vibration from my phone. I glanced down. A new message from my lawyer lit up the screen. "Transfer confirmed. You now own 53% of Monarch Bank shares. The board meeting is scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. Ready to meet your new employees?" I looked back at Daniel, still laughing at his joke. I didn't say a word. I simply smiled. Tomorrow was going to be different. The next morning, I walked into the grand lobby of Monarch Bank's headquarters wearing the same off-the-rack suit from the night before. The security guard, who was used to politely turning me away whenever I tried to visit Daniel's floor, blinked in confusion as I walked past with quiet confidence. "Mr. Robinson," a familiar voice called out. It was Evelyn, my lawyer, standing near the elevators, a folder tucked under her arm. "Everything's set. The board members arrived early. They're excited to hear Daniel's big announcement. She smiled knowingly. They don't know the agenda has changed. For the past 13 years, I've been playing a careful, deliberate game. While Daniel and his friends in high finance laughed at my modest ventures, I was slowly building something much larger. Through Robinson Capital, I created a network of silent partnerships, shell companies, and hidden acquisitions. The businesses I helped rescue from failure became trusted allies, and together, they helped me pull off the unthinkable. Does anyone suspect? I asked as the elevator ascended toward the top floor. Not a soul, Evelyn replied. Each shell company appeared completely independent. Even our sources inside Monarch say Daniel is feeling confident. He's planning to announce their takeover of Rivera Banking Group. I smiled. Rivera was another one of my quiet victories, a company I had taken over through discreet deals, now ready to serve a different purpose. The boardroom was as grand as expected. High ceilings, polished mahogany table, walls of marble, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. Daniel stood at the head of the table, basking in the moment, the same smug grin from last night glued to his face. He saw me walk in and raised an eyebrow. "Eric, what are you doing here? This is a closed meeting." Before I could respond, Evelyn stepped forward and calmly placed a folder on the table in front of him. "Actually," she said, her voice clear and professional, "Mr. Robinson has every right to be here." Daniel grabbed the folder and flipped it open, his face tightening as he read. His eyes scanned the page, then froze. His color changed, first red with anger, then pale as shock took hold. "As of 9 o'clock this morning," I said, walking to the table and taking a seat, "Robinson Capital owns 53% of Monarch Bank shares." Silence. Then a burst of chaos. The room erupted as board members reached for their copies of the documents, flipping pages, and whispering frantically to one another. Chairs scraped back. Pens clicked. The controlled order Daniel once commanded had crumbled in an instant. "Impossible," Daniel muttered, his voice shaking, eyes locked on the page in disbelief. But it wasn't impossible. It was just unexpected, and it was only the beginning. "You think we wouldn't have noticed if someone was buying up shares?" Daniel barked, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Would you really?" I replied calmly, turning on the large screen at the front of the boardroom. A presentation appeared, an intricate web of companies, partnerships, and acquisitions. All of them, in one way or another, are connected to Robinson Capital. You were too busy looking down on small businesses to see what was happening. While you chased big deals and flashy headlines, I was bringing together the very people you ignored. Those businesses you thought were beneath you, they came together under one banner. Mine. Daniel's face twisted in confusion and denial. "This has to be a trick," he snapped. "The Taylor family has run this bank for generations." "Exactly," I said, stepping forward. "And in that time, you've made reckless decisions, pushed away long-term clients, and prioritized risky expansion over stability. Did you think those clients would just disappear? They came to me. Every small dream you mocked, every so-called unimportant investment, they all added up." The room was silent except for the quiet of the projector. Around the table, the board members began to nod slowly as they studied the visual trail of acquisitions. The truth was clear now. While Daniel had been draining the bank's resources with short-sighted ambition, I had built something steady, strong, and loyal. My empire hadn't come from arrogance. It had grown from trust. "You can't do this," Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible now. "Laura, tell him." I turned to face my sister. "Yes, Laura is my sister. And maybe now, after everything, she'll remember what that means." I adjusted my off-the-rack suit, standing a little taller. "Oh, and Daniel, there's no need to present that Rivera Banking Group deal. It won't be going through. They already report to me." Right then, the boardroom doors burst open. Laura rushed in, her face pale, her eyes wide with panic. "Daniel," she cried, tears running down her cheeks. "Why? Is our account frozen?" I turned to her gently. "That's something we need to talk about, Laura. There are irregularities in Daniel's personal trading accounts, some very serious ones." Daniel collapsed into his chair, the color draining from his face. The once polished French suit now looked more like a costume than a symbol of success. He stared blankly at the table, whispering to himself, "All those years you were playing us." "No," I said, quietly but firmly. "I wasn't playing anyone. I was running a business, something you never quite learned to do." The following weeks were a storm of activity, audits, emergency board meetings, and headline-making revelations. What had begun as a calculated takeover swiftly became a full-blown financial scandal. Our team of forensic accountants dug deep into the records, uncovering years of unethical behavior, unauthorized trades, fake profits. Lavish personal expenses are hidden in the books as corporate costs. The once proud Taylor banking dynasty wasn't built on a legacy of strength and honor. It was built on illusion, and that illusion was crumbling fast. One afternoon, I sat in my new office, the same office Daniel had once ruled from, reading through the latest audit reports. The view from the top floor hadn't changed, but everything else had. Suddenly, the door burst open. Laura stood there, hurt flashing across her face. "How could you do this to us?" she asked, her voice shaking. I looked up, calm but honest. "No, Laura. The real question is, how could he do this to you?" Laura stormed into my office, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her face flushed with frustration. She slammed her hands on my desk, eyes blazing. "Do you even realize what people are saying about us? Our friends won't take my calls. They're shutting me out, Eric." I looked up from my desk, meeting her stare. "Your friends?" I asked quietly. "Or Daniel's friends?" "There's a difference." She paused, caught off guard. "What does it matter? Daniel gave me everything. Status. A beautiful life. Respect. He built the world I live in." I stood and walked toward the tall windows behind me, looking out over the city skyline before turning back to her. "Let me show you something." I picked up the remote and tapped a button, bringing security footage onto the office screen. This was from last month's board meeting. Laura turned to look. Her expression changed as she watched the footage. There was Daniel, raising his voice, belittling a junior analyst in front of the room, then mocked an elderly board member who raised concerns about the bank's unethical lending practices. His tone was cruel, dismissive, arrogant. "This is the man you built your perfect life with," I said softly. "This is how he treats people who aren't powerful enough to fight back. Just like how you stood there in silence at that family dinner while he tried to humiliate me." Her face crumpled, a mixture of guilt and sorrow settling in. I didn't know what to do. After he helped with Mom's hospital bills, I felt like I owed him. "He saved us, Eric." I turned toward her, my voice steady. "No, Laura. I paid those bills through one of my shell companies. Daniel just took the credit. Check the financial records. It's all there." She sank into the chair across from me, stunned. Her designer handbag slid from her shoulder and fell to the floor with a soft thud. "Why didn't you ever tell me? Would you have believed me?" I asked. "The brother with small dreams? The one you stopped defending a long time ago?" Before she could answer, the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Robinson," my assistant's voice said. "The FBI agents are here. It's about Mr. Taylor's trading violations." Laura's head shot up, eyes wide with panic. "Eric, please, he's still my husband. And you're still my sister," I said gently, pulling a chair next to hers. "That's why I've arranged for him to avoid prison. He'll cooperate with the investigation. There will be fines and restrictions, and his reputation won't survive, but he won't go to jail. The Taylor legacy ends here, but you won't have to see your husband in handcuffs." She looked at me, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered. "After everything he did to you, why show him mercy?" I reached into my desk drawer and handed her a small framed photo. It was old, faded around the edges. The two of us as kids, grinning in the sunlight. In the photo, Laura was standing in front of me, arms crossed, protecting her nerdy older brother from the schoolyard bullies. "Because a long time ago," I said quietly, "someone taught me that real strength isn't about having power. It's about how you choose to use it." Laura broke down, crying silently into her hands. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from the board lit up the screen. "Daniel has agreed to resign. His final act will be signing over his remaining shares." The message felt heavy final. The Taylor banking dynasty was officially over. Maybe, just maybe, the Robinson siblings had started to heal. 1 year later, the sign on the tall glass building read Robinson and Partners Financial Group, the result of a bold merger between Monarch Bank and the companies I had quietly built over the years. The polished marble floors and mahogany accents remained, but the air inside had shifted completely. It no longer felt like a fortress for the elite. The environment was lighter, warmer, more human. Gone were the days of junior employees shrinking in fear whenever a senior executive walked by. In the new boardroom, once a symbol of exclusion, we now held regular meetings with small business owners, community organizers, and nonprofit leaders. It wasn't just about wealth anymore. It was about impact. I was reviewing a proposal for a microlending program aimed at supporting first-time entrepreneurs when my assistant knocked gently on the door. "Mr. Robinson, you have an unexpected visitor. Daniel." He stepped into the room a moment later. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked smaller, quieter somehow. Not physically, but in presence. The power that once radiated from him was gone. His tailored French suits had been replaced by plain, off-the-rack ones, and the proud stance he used to wear like armor had softened. The immunity deal I negotiated a year earlier had spared him prison time, but his career hadn't survived. His name had become a whisper in the banking world, and most of his old friends had disappeared the moment his empire collapsed. "Eric," he said, nodding, his voice uncertain as he hovered near the door. "I came to sign the last of the divorce papers. Laura told me you'd have them." I motioned for him to sit. "She mentioned you're moving to Milwaukee?" He sat slowly. "Yeah, a small consulting firm." "Very small." He tried to smile, but it faltered. "Kind of ironic, isn't it? All those dreams I used to laugh at, turns out they weren't so small after all." "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "They weren't." He pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it on my desk. Inside were the final documents his remaining Monarch Bank shares signed over as part of the divorce settlement. It was the end of an era in ink and paper. "You know what the hardest part has been?" he said, his voice quieter now. "It's not the money, not even the reputation. It's knowing I had a chance to be part of something meaningful, and I threw it away. Your vision, building a financial system that helps people, strengthens communities. I could have helped you. I could have stood beside you instead of getting in the way." "Yes," I said honestly. "You could have." He nodded. "Laura seems happier now. I see it when we talk, when we meet with the lawyers. She's found her voice again. Started that children's charity she always used to dream about. The one you said was a waste of time." I reminded him gently. He winced. "Yeah, I deserved that and a lot worse." He stood up and straightened his simple tie, far removed from the luxury brands he once flaunted. He looked at me one last time, his eyes tired but sincere. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for that dinner or the loan you needed, for all of it. But for what it's worth, you were the better man, Eric. You always were." Those were Daniel's final words before he walked out of my office. After he left, I stood quietly for a moment, then stepped out into the heart of the company, the open office floors where our people worked. Not just my employees anymore, our employees. A team built on trust, not fear. I passed familiar faces. The young analyst Daniel, once humiliated in a board meeting, was now leading our community outreach program, building bridges between the company and the people it served. The elderly board member Daniel, mocked for being too cautious, his advice had become the cornerstone of our banking model: ethical finance, sustainable growth, and real transparency. On the 12th floor, a whole wing now belonged to the Laura Foundation, a charity my sister had launched for underprivileged children. She ran it with heart and focus, not for recognition, but because it finally gave her something real to believe in. Gone were the designer labels and dinner parties, in their place, purpose, and peace. Some days, Laura and I would eat lunch together in my office, laughing about our childhood, about the wild turns life had taken. Slowly, piece by piece, we were rebuilding something far more valuable than a company. We were rebuilding our bond, the one we'd nearly lost. That afternoon, as I prepared for a board meeting, my assistant walked in with a new file. "A loan application," she said. "Small bakery downtown. The owner, Samantha, says she met you 13 years ago." I paused, the name instantly familiar. Samantha, the woman who ran a tiny cafe back when I was just starting Robinson Capital. When I couldn't afford her coffee, she gave it to me anyway. "Pay me back when you can," she'd said. She didn't just serve me coffee. She believed in me when almost no one else did. I picked up a pen and signed the application. Approved with compliments from the small dream believer. As I handed it back, I realized something. The real win in all of this wasn't taking over Monarch Bank or watching Daniel fall. It was building something no one thought I could. Something lasting. Something meaningful. Daniel had once told me business was about power. In a way, he was right, but he never understood what true power is. It's not about how much you can take from others, it's about how much you can help others build. And in that, I had already won.